Right, so we have two more TED Talks. So we're going to move on to our next one. And again, we have a co-presentation for this one. So we have Sarah Parker, who is the Executive Officer of the Victorian Farmers Markets Association, and Amanda McClaren, who is the Director of the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority. So as the Executive Officer of the VFMA, Sarah brings extensive experience in agriculture, research and community development. She holds a Master's in Agriculture and Rural Development, is a graduate of the NFF diploma program, and serves in leadership roles such as Chair of the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority. Sarah and her husband operate an irrigated dairy farm in Victoria. Amanda is a passionate advocate for agriculture and community leadership. With a Master's in Teaching, she champions agricultural education, rural development and regenerative farming. Amanda is a Director of the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority, a GAICD graduate, and former Mayor of Strathbogie Shire. She and her husband run a successful poultry and beef business in central Victoria. So I'd like to welcome Sarah and Amanda to the stage.
It's like trying to drive a tractor on the farm, which I don't do. So are we moving forward? Sorry, my notes just closed and we'll just reopen them. So we're actually going to take you down to probably some smaller scale farming, and we're going to actually have a look at farmers markets within Victoria, but also on a global scale, because the Victorian Farmers Markets Association is actually part of a global group called the World Farmers Markets Coalition, which is actually a UN project that came about around issues of food security and food supply around the world during COVID and after COVID. So just to introduce ourselves, yes, I'm the EO of the Victorian Farmers Markets Association, but I don't actually work alone. I work for a board of 8 directors who are all involved in food security, food policy and food production. And I also work with over 600 producers and members of the association, of which Amanda is one, and I've brought her along as Exhibit A. Sorry, Amanda, to call you. I've already spoken about the World Farmers Markets Coalition. The role that they play at the moment is actually reinvigorating markets and readdressing the way markets are seen around the world. Part of that is using the farmers markets in whatever country they're in whatever region, to look at the sustainability, biodiversity and whatever other issues are in a regional area, and look at how the farmers markets can readdress issues that are related to the SDGs at a UN level, global level, and then moving down into regional levels. Some of the work they're doing, and some cold-face examples would be in South America, they're looking at countries like Peru, where the farmers markets still hold the rights, well, the producers at those markets still hold the rights to some of the rarest forms of potatoes. And those potatoes, the genetics and the genomics, may be sought after in the future as we look at addressing issues around production and climate change. And obviously the farmers markets, which we've told you a little bit about, but I'm just going to skip through some of these slides. We actually have 600 members, and that is growing. We've got over 30 markets. We just launched a new one on the weekend at Docklands. So the markets aren't just about food, sustainability, biodiversity. They're also about creating a sense of place and community. And we're often at the cold face of talking to consumers, customers and potential customers and supporters of agriculture as they purchase their food, and actually talk to the farmers themselves. Because we have a rule at all of our accredited farmers markets, the people selling the food and with the stall must actually be the producers of the food. And I'm going to hand you over to hear Amanda start talking very passionately about agriculture.
Thank you. And I was just going to share with you a little bit about our journey. My husband and I purchased our farm 20 plus years ago, and we've been on a journey in the small scale sector for that time, and we have been at farmers markets, well, not for the full 20 years, probably for about 16 of those years. And it was interesting, we moved into that market because we weren't we weren't in control of our market with our cattle. So you can see from our logo, we've got cattle, pigs and chickens. And we had, up until probably 3 or 4 years ago, we had cattle, pigs and chickens, but we had to get rid of the pigs because in Victoria you can't farm pigs and chickens on the same farm anymore. But we still have the cattle and we have the chickens, and we supply our chickens to farmers markets every weekend. We also supply to providors, butcher shops and to specialty high-end restaurants. So chances are, if you've had a really nice meal somewhere in Melbourne, you might have had a Yapunya chicken. We are very focused around the production of our animals. We're very focused. We're surrounded, our farm's lovely, it's surrounded by national parks, so sustainability is a really key focus for my husband Ian and I. And that includes things around the chicken's diet. We have a special diet made at a local feed mill, so we reduce food miles. We are very keen on the animal welfare, and because we're eyeballing our customers, as we say, we speak to our customers and we know our customers and they know us. We get to talk about that story. We get to talk about the sustainable nature of our business. We get to talk about how we grow our chickens, what we do, what we feed them and that sort of thing. And that provides a little bit of, I think, comfort for customers if they can have a conversation with you, and that is something that's really beneficial at the farmers markets. We are told that our birds have good old-fashioned flavour. We get a lot of people turn around and say, your chicken tastes like what my grandma used to cook and that sort of thing. And I think that that's just a really interesting connection that we have with our customers that we don't necessarily get from our beef, because our beef goes through the normal markets. Our chicken, we control the marketing of. We are direct to the consumer via the Victorian Farmers Markets Association, and the Victorian Farmers Markets Association has been incredibly supportive of small scale. So I like to think of small scale as we are small in volume, but we're large in value in terms of our commodities. So my chickens wholesale for $34 a bird. They're not a $10 cook chook at Coles. They're totally different. But there's room in the market for everybody. So there is room in the market for the higher volume, lower value, and there's room in the market for us. And we are all about supporting our communities and our circular economy, and there's going to be a really interesting challenge that we're facing that Sarah's going to share with you as well.
So we've had a look at the Australian Sustainability Framework and then had to think about where do we fit in that framework, and we thought we'd just provide some examples. So the first one we looked at was economic resilience. So there's been a rapid expansion of markets globally and within Australia. Examples and numbers around that, there were around 70 markets in 2004 that were accredited, grew to 180 in 2015, and at last count there were over 300 best practice markets trading on a regular basis. Our markets are significantly contributing to local economies. We're supporting small, medium-scale farmers and food producers, and some of those actually move on from our farmers market system into the commercial world. One of the examples that comes to mind is Bulla mushrooms. They actually started with a market stall at farmers markets, now supply Coles and Woolies with mushrooms. We're also providing opportunities for our producers where they actually sell at the markets, but they also sell outside of the markets. So a number of our producers have online stalls, direct-to-consumer platforms that they then actually work together to sell whatever produce they produce. The other thing we thought we'd point out was during COVID, the farmers markets had to be quite agile and had a large capacity to adopt and implement new practices as they were introduced in Victoria. And these markets actually continued to trade through the entire time, offering, the normal shopping routes that consumers were used to. And they also pivoted, and I hate that word because I think of irrigation, but I'll use it now. They pivoted to look at things like home delivery produce boxes, online order portals, and pick-up points right throughout Victoria for their produce.
I should add in there, COVID was really traumatic for, I know for many people in terms of lockdowns and the way we had to conduct ourselves during that time. But for the small scale producers who were attending farmers markets, the rules changed almost daily. We had to be incredibly resilient during that time to just get our product to market. And I've got to say, it was probably one of the most stressful times that I've ever experienced, but it was also the busiest in terms of our business.
And one thing that we also need to say is, regardless of what sort of markets we are, we always actually follow all the national, state regulations and local food regulations as well, before farmers even are able to actually come to a market. We also looked around the sustainability, environmental stewardship framework. We support sustainability and biodiversity. A lot of our farmers have regen ag practices, and they're growing their business through those practices. The other thing is, a number of our farmers actually support biodiversity, with local examples around heritage varieties of horticulture, cropping, and breeds of livestock that they sell at the farmers markets. And I think I'm going to hand over to Amanda to talk about the engagement of people, communities and animals, and no doubt you'll hear a little bit of education in there as well.
Thanks, Sarah. So, this is I guess, my passion area in terms of farming and agriculture. I was Mayor of Strathbogie Shire for 4 years. Strathbogie Shire, our biggest sector was agriculture, still is. And I was all about looking at how we could support agriculture in our sector and in our local government area. I then went on to become Thank you, you drive it, okay. I then went on to become the chair of the Hume Regional Development Australia Committee, and again focused on agriculture, and particularly with a focus around agricultural education, because I was worried that the average age of our farmers in Strathbogie was increasing year on year, which is an unusual across Victoria and also the state. And what we were seeing was that we weren't getting many of the young people into agriculture, and I was wondering why that was. And we didn't have a dedicated agricultural high school. So knowing that other states did, Victoria doesn't, it led me down a pathway. I went back and did a Masters of Teaching. I'm now teaching agriculture, and I'm really keen to involve the community and focus on entrepreneurship, focus on actually community building around agriculture, and hopefully see an agricultural secondary school here in Victoria in the near future. I think the important thing about farmers markets in relation to this space around communication and education is it is also the area where we also support the social licence for farming. So we get asked a lot of questions at farmers markets as farmers. A lot of the questions, quite frankly, would probably frighten the socks off you guys. You know, they're the sorts of questions that you think, oh my goodness, you are so distant from where your food comes from. Let's have a chat about that. So whenever we get those sort of questions coming into us, I'm more than happy to step aside and have a conversation with somebody around their agricultural production, and whether it's, at a small scale or whether it's something that, people wanting to know more broadly. I think that we do need to make sure that in terms of education, people understand where their food and fibre comes from, and that they have the ability and they feel comfortable coming up and talking to us.
Okay, we can give them the 2-minute signal.
1 minute. Oh, you better go.
That's okay.
Sarah's got something to say. Yeah.
So I've got a couple of things. One thing we've thought about is, if we are going to be at the coalface of talking with consumers, we actually have to have data that support our claims. So with the support of the Victorian government, we've embarked on a market metrics project. That project is looking at a whole lot of issues and items that are related to farmers markets. Some of the things around sustainability that we're looking at is how far people are travelling to come to a market, the mode of transport they're travelling with, but also how far the food that they're buying is actually travelling and how it's packaged. We're also looking at what's influencing their decisions in terms of purchasing, and what areas of sustainability, what words are used to actually influence that purchase. And then we're looking at the data in terms of the spend. What are they spending more money on? What are they spending less money on? How is that influenced? Because what that does is that enables our farmers markets to know what produce range they need to offer, how they are connecting with those consumers that attend our markets, and where do we go next with the claims that we have. Because reality is that if we actually want to remain realistic and we want to remain at the forefront of people's minds when they are making purchasing decisions, we have to have the data to prove that our story is facts. And I think I will just drop off there. One other thing I might actually raise is we've currently got a challenge in our farmers markets. Last week, where the world operates, the small producers in Victoria got sent an email from a processor to be told they had 14 days to find somewhere else to take their meat. And it's about finding a little bit of balance. So I haven't had much sleep. I've got a lot of farmers making a lot of phone calls, quite stressed, but we'll work our way through it. But it's about finding the middle line in terms of sustainability for us at the moment is how do we support the small producers, but also actually make sure that they are competitive in terms of price and service like the large. So you'll probably see a few headlines and news articles coming out of the VFMA and our many producers in the future as we campaign for that. And I'll leave Amanda with the clicker. I hate driving things. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, you're doing well. Thank you, Sarah and Amanda. I have to admit, when Sarah phoned and said, I wanted to see if farmers markets would be interested, I have to admit I'd never actually thought about any kind of governance structures behind farmers markets, and the fact there's an association and they're actually doing these kinds of things we thought would make a really interesting talk for today as well. So thank you very much for sharing those insights.